Hello and welcome. You're watching News 9. We're bringing you stories from the world of business, policy and economy. First up, Indian economy is off to a good start. A set of high-frequency indicators including GST, PMI, auto sales and UPI transactions are painting a robust picture of the economy so far. And Google has introduced restrictions for personal loan apps that makes customers' data which is vulnerable to be protected by apps whichever will be installed on Google henceforth starting 1st of June. Also on the show, retail monthly sales of electric two-wheelers scaled to a new high in May of 2023, almost an increase of 57% on the news of reduced subsidies starting June. Also, more Make in India iPhones will hit market very soon as Apple supplier Foxconn prepares to start manufacturing iPhone units in Karnataka starting April 2024. All that and more on this show. With me at this point in time in the studio is Krishna Kumar. Also joining us is Karthik Malhotra. Gentlemen, good morning. Not afternoon yet.
Oh, where's your coffee, Shweta?
Here's my coffee, Karthik. A very important story that we're tracking this morning, and that is with respect to dubious loan apps. We are now given to understand that Google has made it extremely stringent for loan apps which are hoping to be installed on Google Play Store and then be installed on users. They have to comply with certain set of measures.
Absolutely. And Shweta, this is something that had become a pain in the neck for a lot of users, and especially the slightly lesser educated, more vulnerable guys out there who needed instant money. And playing a game or scrubbing through social media, you stumble upon an ad, you click on that ad that takes you to, and how does this all work? Because your cookies are being tracked. So you're actually looking for personal loan, cheap personal loan, interest-free personal loan, all that. So, your social media engines, your algorithms, they sort of feed off that. And they realize that, hey, there is somebody who's looking for personal loan, and when you're playing a game or you're on social media, you click on an ad that takes you to the Play Store, you download an authentic looking app, and almost through muscle memory, you check all the boxes. Give access to contacts, give access to photographs, give access to videos, give access to documents. Pretty much everything on your phone becomes accessible to that loan app. And so many people have lost money, have been burdened with loan, and have been exploited to a point that their personal images have been extracted from their phones, morphed into obscene images, shared with their contacts, and in a bid to exploit more money out of them. And finally, there has been a crackdown on that. So Government of India as well as RBI both pestered Google, and finally Google has complied. So now what this move does is it enforces very stringent measures where you need to be an authentic loan app. And how do you prove that? You've got to share with Google your lending license, which the RBI gives you, or a third-party agreement that you have. If you're an aggregator, you don't have a lending license. If you're an aggregator, you've got third-party agreements with authentic lending apps that you're able to aggregate customers for them to loan money to. Now, in addition to that, you cannot access contacts, you cannot access photographs, you cannot access videos, you cannot access any personal information whatsoever. And it safeguards customers by not falling prey to these dubious apps. But there's a little bit of a hitch in that. The hitch is the authentic guys are now going to spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of manpower, a lot of money verifying their customers. Because up until now, you could upload your PAN card, your Aadhaar card, your other KYC documents on these apps. Google is saying nothing doing. You can't even do that anymore. So while the dubious guys get thrown out of the market, the authentic, serious players will find it difficult and expensive to acquire and retain customers and authenticate those customers.
Absolutely, and we'll come to that because that's also important in a sense to identify genuine recipients so as to not lose money to people who are, of course, playing to multiple avenues, Krishna, to get money. But very interesting there, so far we've seen extortion in the name of, loan apps not just try to get the money back that they have lended, but also use every possible measure in the book, as Karthik pointed out, from harassment to exploitation to morphing your images. Many people have died, Krishna, in this country. There's been an effort made by government, by RBI to crack down on these as we call it, dubious or fake loan apps, and that seems to be happening now.
Oh, absolutely. The process essentially, Shweta, began about a year ago. It was in July 2022 when the RBI, along with the Government of India, started investigating, these. At that time, we're talking about 274 fraudulent personal loan apps. 274 that were under the scanner of the Government of India and the Reserve Bank of India. And they were very clear that there are Chinese scammers who are behind. In fact, they say there's one big Chinese mastermind behind all these fraudulent loan apps. And check this out, talking about extortion and harassment. In many instances, it was discovered that one of the milder insulting names used in texts of people who got these loans to harass them into paying back the loan money, the milder slanderous names used, the term used, I can't believe I'm saying this, is rapist. That's the level that these apps, these scammer apps are going down to. And essentially the issue is because all of these apps, a huge majority of these personal loan apps are based out of China, are controlled out of China, with Indian agents getting a huge commission. So this is a racket that's essentially began in 2021 at the peak of, during the pandemic time.
Absolutely. When people were more needy, they needed
and there's
more
a clear
money.
trend over here, Shweta. There were young people who lost their jobs. There were young people who were on their phones all the time, as Karthik was talking about, playing games, doing this, doing that. They have the apps, they have all the free time because there's no jobs available, and they need money. So, and they don't know any better because of the age group that they belong to. So, a lot of young people watching this, you're talking about the 18 to 25 to 30 age group, who need jobs, who should be at jobs, who did not have jobs in 2021. That's when this thing erupted. Seemed like free cash, but as you're saying, so many people died, so many people have been pathetically harassed. And now, if I were to read out, Shweta, in fact, I have a list of the 274. I'm going to just read out a few names so that people can be aware. There's Cash Advance Attach, Dhanpal, Cash Host, Rupee OK, Cash Manager, Fry Loan. 274 of these kind of apps. Look at the names. The names will tell you how fraudulent they are. Young people lured into it. And I'm extremely glad that it's not just the RBI and the Government of India who are taking it up, but they're now, joining hands with somebody like Google. And I wish they do that with Apple as well, is all I can say at this stage.
Absolutely. We don't know if it's going to happen with Apple Store
No,
as
Apple,
well.
in any case, is a little more strict. On Google, it has thus far been easy for any app developer to go and list on Google.
Okay.
Apple asks for greater verification, greater authenticity, and that is why it takes longer for apps to release on Apple as compared to Google, because it pretty much tests your code at every point.
Right.
And Apple has better compliance with GDPR norms, which are prevalent in Europe as opposed to Google, and that is why Google in US as well as in Europe and many other parts of the world, including Ireland, Australia, etc., is fighting these battles on privacy, which governments across the world are pushing down on Google, and rightly so, I believe.
And before we move on, I think it's also important to mention, as you briefly touched on, and that is for genuine apps to acquire customers will also be made difficult because you just don't have to anymore. One of the operating mechanisms of these apps was that it's easy loan, it's easy money. That is, you just put your name, your PAN card. In some cases, you don't even need a PAN card. You can put your Aadhaar details, your PAN card details, whatever is available to you, and will disburse it in the shortest possible time with the highest possible interest rates. We of course want access to your photographs, to your in some cases your contact list. We should know everything that is on your phone. But with genuine apps at this point in time, you will have more stringent measures in place, which means that the scale and the operations will cost more money now in order to acquire new customers.
So acquisition will be pretty much the same. Retention, I think, is going to be expensive. So you will use the same. See, what do the genuine guys do? What do the certified loan apps or the BFSI sector that lends out to people like you and me and Krishna, what they do is they, in any case, look at your CIBIL score. They're not going to lend money to you if your CIBIL score is low. They would do KYC in any case. It's just that now the format of KYC, instead of it being digital, a couple of clicks, a couple of tabs on your phone and your KYC is through, that becomes a little more difficult and a little more expensive.
Right. So therefore, new customers would be difficult to acquire. Would
It'll
that
be expensive to acquire those customers.
Right. And that would be, of course, interesting. We'll have to wait and watch out for the impact.
You need more feet on street, you need more agencies, you need more third party. I mean, back in the day, not that long ago, about 7-8 years ago, to verify your Paytm wallet, they would send a
They
person
were
down
sending a
physically,
customer.
right?
Oh, yes,
You would show your Aadhaar, they would scan
customer
it,
care
your
representative.
biometrics would be taken, or opening a new bank account for
Right.
that matter. Somebody would come home with a tablet connected to a biometric machine, you punch in your thumb on it and it authenticates your identity. All of those measures may come back, or there could be digital innovations also. I mean, you know, don't upload a document, touch a particular area in your phone and your thumb gets scanned and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So things like these would be innovated upon, and the BFSI sector of course is flush with funds, especially the fintech guys. They have enough and more money to innovate and implement new product features which will ease this cost, but in the immediate term of course they may have to rely on the rudimentary feet on street
Right.
model.
And does this also mean that it will be difficult to get that easy money now?
Easy money for people with low CIBIL score, yes, and
It will be difficult.
rightly so.
Right.
And I would say, you know, go back to the oldest cliche. There's nothing called as a free lunch in this world.
Absolutely.
There's nothing called as easy money. If the money is coming to you easy, then I'd say no. I would say just stay away from it. You don't know. I mean, it's not just about personal.
You don't know what you're going to pay back.
You don't know what
And
you're
in
clicking
what
on.
form. Absolutely.
You don't know what you're clicking on anything unless otherwise it comes from a verified source. I would say, from the media industry, I would say, be it news or loans, take it only from verified sources. You know?
What happened to the 2,000 rupee note I gave you yesterday? Well, nothing.
I have to take it back to the RBI from what I know, and I have a deadline till the
You
30th of
have time.
September. I'm being told post 30th September we can still use it as legal tender. I don't know when it's legal.
But you
illegal.
have ample time.
I don't know about the note, but all I can tell you is that anything that doesn't involve a note, online, app, link, click, just say hi, we'll give you money.
Don't take
Stay
it.
away.
Absolutely. Don't, and I think that's a very crucial piece of advice.
like-
Don't
it's like-
take money if it's being given out to you, handed out to you.
It's like all those movies that say based on a true story. It's like those movies which have a problem of being true.
All right, that is an interesting and important story. But another interesting story that we've been tracking over the course of last 2 days, and that is with respect to the macroeconomic environment in the country. Numbers that have come in as of May of 2023 indicate that economy is showing green shoots of recovery from UPI to PMI. Everything, Karthik, in line with what we've been discussing. It's a good start to the year.
Better than expected, in line but positively in line. So yeah, I mean, numbers have been coming out every day, and numbers, not surprisingly, are good. And I mean, you know, at the cost of sounding a little jingoistic, I think, yeah, India has pretty much arrived on the global scene, and we are doing better than every other economy possibly in the world. And compared to Pakistan, I mean, you know, Pakistan has seen inflation of 37-38% last quarter. Compare that to the modest inflation numbers that we are seeing, or even growth. I mean, we are living in an economy, in a connected economy where Germany has gone into recession. We've seen what's happened with Sri Lanka. We are seeing what's happening with Pakistan. Our neighborhood, the West, far West, US growing modestly at what, 1.2, 1.3%.
Then you're identified as like which political leaning do you have. Now, without any kind of political leaning, you can look at these numbers, and somebody with a sane mind, without any kind of bias, will look at these numbers and go, oh my God, these numbers are good, especially because the context that Karthik was talking about. Economies big and small, developed and undeveloped, are going through an absolutely torrid time because of the levels of uncertainty. I'm not saying every economy is in recession. They say US is on the verge of a recession. Germany, they say, is just slipped into a recession. But Germany, despite slipping into recession, is doing much better than so many other economies. So it's all relative. Fact of the matter is that the only point that this drives home is the matter that India is the most resilient economy in the world. India is the fastest growing major economy, is a cliche that we all know. And then we do not have too much competition, because as a major economy, nothing is more major than India in today's world. What do you mean the fastest growing major economy? But what's actually important is that India is actually resilient to all the headwinds and the tailwinds of the global, connected global economy that we belong to. So, you know, in that sense, despite the headwinds and tailwinds, if you're able to put up that kind of GST numbers, 1.57 trillion rupees of GST collections in the month of May, that's the 5th time GST collections have crossed the 1.5 trillion mark. So India's biggest tax reform is booming. People are, you know, signing up and paying GST and filing their returns. That's a very good sign. It's the kind of trust that Indians seem to be having in the economy as well. That's important. And of course, the auto sales numbers tell a story. great domestic sales despite exports taking hit, but you can't blame the auto industry for it because exports have been down across the board. So auto industry is just a part of it. So the numbers do tell a very good story. Yes, you can say our growth rates are not 8%, 9%, 10%, which we ideally should be. It's about 6 to 7%. But in this environment, with the size of the economy and the complications that India has, to do 6 to 7% itself is very good.
Let me play the devil's advocate at this point in time.
I wanted to do that. But anyway,
I am going to do that and then do that.
I think I bring out the devil in both of you.
So, talking about specifically GST collections at a record high, but also due to a low baseline effect. And what many would also say...
Low baseline effect and inflation.
And inflation.
You're buying the same
Absolutely.
products 5% too expensive, and hence your tax collection is 5% more.
Okay.
Right. So you've been maintaining the 1.5 range for the last 5-6 months now. In fact, we've been on top of 1.4 lakh crores for the last 14 months. Right. But we've also seen successive month-on-month inflation. Inflation has ebbed a little bit now, but you are seeing the base effect and you're seeing the inflationary effect both.
And if I might go back to what Karthik was saying to just counter him with his own point, inflation is at a high up by India's standards, but it's still lower as compared to so many of the economies in the West. You're talking about 10% inflation in the UK, near 10 double-digit inflation in the UK. Imagine if you lived in London. Sounds like a dream for every Indian in every big city wanting to move to London. You're going to die paying those bills.
Yeah, but then also you're earning equally more. The
With an
per
appreciating
capita
rupee.
income. Exactly. Unless you're paying in rupee, unless
Fact of
you're
the
traveling
matter is
abroad
the
and paying in rupee.
that would be a product of cost of living. And if you see every developed economy, even a city like Singapore, Singapore has one of the highest cost of living, beating even London. That's in comparison to what you get as a salary. And the cost of living in India still continues to be one of the lowest in the
Purchase
world.
power parity.
So,
I have nothing to disagree on. Especially if you're not living in Bombay, or you're not living in Bangalore. If you're living in Noida, you're still not paying as high as if you were living in Delhi, in main city of Delhi.
if you're living in Bombay, you should just automatically believe that you're in Tokyo. That's what you should believe when it comes to buying property.
See, I think to just bridge it, it is very simple. We are growing faster than the rate of inflation. That is real growth.
Right.
Look at UK. UK has inflation of 10%, growth rate of barely just about 0.2, 0.3% is the growth rate, right? It's a state of stagflation. Look at US. Inflation upwards of 6%, growth rate of 1.2%, stagflation. Look at Germany, forget inflation, negative growth. Recession. 2 consecutive quarters, recession. So as long as we are growing faster than inflation, we are overall doing better. The report card is green.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I may add a cricketing analogy to it, just the recently concluded IPL finals, when Chennai Super Kings was bowling in the first innings, it seemed as if like Ahmedabad was going great guns. They were like smacking the hell out of every delivery. They have the biggest score. But what I could notice at the time was MS Dhoni knowing that they're going to hit, this is a good pitch, but they should not hit more than a particular level. So India growing slow might seem bad, but India not growing slower than what it could is in itself good news, is the point I'm trying to make. Yes, 6.2% is not a great number for GDP. That's not the number we're looking at. It's not the potential that India has. India has potential to grow in double digits. We're hoping that when you come out of the entire pandemic and recession and the global economy improves, we were able to hit those double-digit figures. But the good news is that in these bad times, how well are you doing? That's the story, corporate lesson you learn from Chennai Super Kings.
Absolutely.
You have an entire season, you're going to lose matches, you're going to win matches. It's all about how you keep it going to make sure you win the trophy in the end. And I think India is still up for a trophy.
Okay.
As far as being the best,
my only concern with that analogy is that there is no match here and there is no equal play. I mean, everybody is growing at their own.
Oh, IPL, so many people complain about lack of equal play.
Lack of equal, at least there's no fair play.
No, so let's look at our 11 players in this whole economic cycle that we are in, right? And Prime Minister downwards till RBI Governor, look at everybody. I think we've been fairly prudent. We've been prudent. I wouldn't say we've been extremely aggressive, but we've been prudent. We've done supply side reforms. When we knew demand was dwindling, we have done supply side reforms during COVID, right? We built infrastructure, government spending, a major contributor to GDP growth. We have spent, when corporate sector was reining in its animal spirits, the government said, okay, let's loosen the purse strings, let's go ahead and spend. Unlike the US, we have not printed currency. Easy money. You were talking about free lunches, easy money. RBI did not go on a rampage printing money to offset the short-term impact of a COVID-like situation, or even the supply side, the supply chain issues that cropped up because of China's zero COVID, as well as the Russia-Ukraine war, we didn't go ahead and print money when difficult times dawned upon us. We've been hawkish on our interest rates, but when we saw inflation was coming under check, we paused. We did not blindly follow US Fed, right? And there's one more point I wanted to add. Anyway, I'll come back to it. So broadly, I think, we've played the innings well. It was a difficult pitch. It was a difficult field. You didn't have the best cheerleaders across the world, thumping victory for you. But we played the innings well. We've survived, we've thrived, and we've come out of the shadows of, whatever the world was
I'll give you another analogy
against us.
In football as well, Manchester United. I mean, yes, we don't have Sir Alex Ferguson as a coach, not those glory days, but the fact that they're able to end up in the top 3 in the league this season with a brand new coach. We might say that, oh, Manchester did not win the season this time as well. But the fact of the matter is that in that time, that transition time, the worst of times, they've managed to eke out better results. And usually what happens is that when the times are better, you do better than everybody else. Because you did better than everybody else when the times were bad.
And I just recall the last point, buying Russian oil. I think the smartest thing to do. You've been able to avert sanctions, but you've seen OPEC plus cut fuel production, right? So you've been able to exploit a situation to your advantage by procuring oil, procuring it cheap, bypassing sanctions, and sticking your neck out and saying, hey, I need to protect my interests,
my people, my
and
country.
Not really fight a war that you expect it to be mine. It's not my war, it's your war.
Absolutely. And to sum it up, India still remains the bright spot amid global gloom and doom. We will, of course, have to wait and watch out for whether that's going to be the condition 6 months down the line. It is a crucial year, right, before general elections next year. The government will have to, of course, keep up the momentum of economic growth, and it has a very, very heavy task ahead of it. But we're going to move on to another story that we're tracking since yesterday, and that is the sale of two-wheelers. We are now given to understand that two-wheelers scaled up to a new high of more than 100,000 units just in the month of May. This on the back of the fact that the government has cut down on subsidy by the way of FAME scheme. Therefore, many automakers are planning to increase prices. Some of them already have. They have declared, and we discussed that. But essentially, the story here emerging, Karthik, that is, people got their last window, last opportunity, and they went ahead, booked that two-wheeler. Sales there better than expected.
Yeah, Shweta, 2 points to this story. Number one, of course, we've seen record registrations, which is people who may have booked their vehicles in the month of April or even before that, but got delivery only in May, registered their vehicle. So that is 1.57 lakh, if I'm not mistaken. Upwards of 1.5 lakh units. And new vehicle bookings, electric scooters specifically, I'm talking about 1.06 lakh. So cumulatively, it's a good number. Now, remember last year, we had upwards of 1 million electric scooters sold. And backing on and counting on FAME subsidies to continue, the industry had a cumulative internal target of about 2.3 million scooters. By that logic, this number is fairly small.
Okay.
Right. So we are still just about, even if we were to maintain this pace, which I doubt, with the price hike on account of a 60,000 rupees subsidy per scooter coming down to about 22,500 rupees per scooter, it's a massive decline in subsidy and a massive increase in prices. So I doubt this trend will continue for subsequent months. And then even if you were to maintain a run rate of about 1 lakh scooters per month, which is the number of new scooters sold in the month of May, and April actually was much lower, just about 67,000 scooters or something, because that is where the confusion on the policy was.
Right, and that's why there's been a 56% jump.
Correct. So yeah, so jump
month
on month. Right. So if you were to even hypothetically say 1 lakh scooters a month to be sold, you're still looking at just about 1.2 million at the end of the financial year, which is about 50% of the 2.3 million target that the industry had set out for itself on the back of the subsidies, continuance of the same subsidized schedule that FAME 2 was meant to offer. So it's definitely a bummer for the industry. They've made massive investments. They have taken PLI and FAME subsidies both. FAME subsidies have been passed on directly to customers. PLI subsidies have been obviously, retained by the companies, and PLI continues, and they are therefore going to be in a better position to continue, manufacturing scooters. But with the prices going up, demand for electric scooters, I believe, is going to come down, because this was a category that could have really picked up. I'm not saying subsidies need to continue forever, absolutely not. But you'd allocated a budget of 10,000 crores. See it through. Let that organic momentum build up, because that is going to build the ecosystem. That will build service stations. That will bring charging stations to your proximity. It'll give a great fillip to the overall e-mobility ecosystem, which now will take even longer to get mobilized.
In which case, I think my question to you, Krishna, is was there a need to continue with FAME 3, move from FAME 2 to FAME 3, in a sense, continue subsidizing two-wheelers, picking up from where Karthik left off, and that is, you've built an ecosystem, you've built your supply chain, you've started, getting some sort of incentive from the government by the way of PLI, and the auto industry, two-wheeler specifically, electric two-wheeler has now started to flourish. We're not meeting our numbers just as yet, but was it important at this point for the government to continue, or does it make sense to discontinue subsidizing vehicles and build infrastructure instead for two-wheelers?
I really wish I had a pointed answer to that question, but for me, let me just assess the situation. Last year was the breakout year for electric vehicles in India. More than 1 million units were sold just last year. This is the first time more than 1 million electric vehicle units, two-wheelers and cars put together.
Electric scooters. 1 million was electric scooters only. Yeah.
So now you're talking about a situation where it's just about reaching a critical mass of the entire auto market. People who are on the fence about, opting for a electric vehicle, be it a scooter or be it a three-wheeler, they are making the choice. They started making the choice last year. It's a very delicate time. My question is, when the subsidies come down, it automatically means that the electric two-wheeler makers, electric scooter makers are going to pass on that extra cost to the consumers. Absolutely. And prices are going to jump. That's the most logical thing that's going to happen. And either way, the problem with electric vehicles in the country was the fact that they all came at least 30% premium to petrol and diesel vehicles.
Correct.
And now that 30% premium becomes a 50% premium or even a 60% premium. And that throws budgets out of whack. And you're talking about electric scooters. We're talking about middle class people in India buying them. We're not talking about super fancy electric Mercedes, where if the budget goes up by a few lakhs, it wouldn't make a difference. Every 1,000 here makes a difference, and especially when you have the quality of petrol and diesel scooters available in the country. You have Honda, you have companies making excellent petrol and diesel scooters. Let's not forget, yes, they are made on non-renewable energy, but they're very good, stylish, within budget, does the thing for you. Look at the utility value of a regular petrol diesel scooter. So that still exists. So this is, if you ask me, if the prices go up by 50%, 30%, they're disastrous for the electric two-wheeler business per se, considering the competition there, because somebody can buy a bike also. They don't need to buy a scooter. They can buy a bike because the category is huge. It's a two-wheeler. Now, somebody is not making a like-for-like replacement of a petrol-diesel scooter with an electric scooter. Somebody who wants to buy a Hero Honda Splendor might want to turn around and buy an electric scooter. So these things, the equilibrium will be badly affected if the prices go up by 30%. And from that perspective, if you were to ask me, I simply don't understand why the subsidies were taken away at this stage. Because let the market explode. Let electric two-wheelers become a...
I agree with that. Yes.
From the tipping point, we actually tripped back to where we started from.
Right. And I understand government's concern, because many of these electric two-wheelers, and from what I know, because I've been covering auto industry for a while now, even as a rookie reporter, I started off covering auto industry. And one of the concerns from the insiders is that this money that came by the way of subsidy was in fact misutilized to a great extent.
But those guys got penalized.
And they got penalized, and the investigation is still on. So there's been a loss of faith and a loss of trust as to where this subsidy is going. And the government is at this point of time is worried whether the money is being utilized towards its necessary cause. And one of the key parameters on which many of these companies failed, and that is with regards to localization. Are these companies who say that they are getting spare parts from the outside and making the scooters here, is that true or not? Government says that there is a misappropriation of funds. All these parts are coming from China, from other, relatively cheaper markets, and being given out here, and you find a tag of Make in India and you get that subsidy. So essentially, auto players making a lot of money at the expense of the government. That was, of course, the charge. Many, well-known companies like Honda are under investigation, are under radar. So there's been a loss of faith, and that is being read by many people as one of the reasons why the subsidy was cut down.
Simple answer. If there is an activity being undertaken against the laid out norms, penalize those players. You can't have a mass stacking of subsidy across the board for even players who adhere to every norm laid out. Second point, on batteries, there is dependence on China. You can't help it. It doesn't take 1 year to build a battery ecosystem. It doesn't take 1 year to
build a semiconductor
ecosystem.
Absolutely.
You doled out and rolled out certain incentives. You've got to stick to them for the ecosystem to be built. There are business plans made, capital investments made on the basis of certain expectations and certain continuity in the expectations laid out. After these investments are made, you can't just withdraw it just because some players allegedly flouted on the rules. If there was flouting of rules, penalize them. Get them to pay back 50% of the subsidy, 80% of the subsidy, as the case may be.
All right. So from what it appears,
and if I may add to that,
right,
just because there are 274 fraudulent Chinese loan apps does
you
not
don't
mean
ban all.
you don't
loan
ban all.
apps. I sort of agree with that, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the FAME 1 scheme, as it was introduced, I think way back in 2015 or 16, either of the 2 years, do you think it's now run its course, or it should have been extended for a couple of more years? How long do you give to a subsidy scheme before you eventually roll it back? Because there is a need to not keep incentivizing it. There is also a need to build infrastructure, and we've been discussing that, how important it is to have charging stations in the country, how important it is to invest in battery, and how important it is to invest in technology as opposed to keep subsidizing it for the end user.
Agreed. But I think we were a little ahead of the curve in 2016, 2017. You barely had enough electric vehicles in the world. You didn't even have the likes of Tesla selling the kind of numbers that they're selling today. You didn't have the Hondas and the Toyotas of the world. They were still exploring hybrid as a technology back then. Full electric was still a vision, still a dream for some of the biggest automakers in the world. So I think we were a little ahead of our times. Good. So it should have been a phased out, step up, well laid out plan. But when FAME 2 was kicked off and the 10,000 crore rupees allocated, only 5,000 crores utilized, at least let that 10,000 crore corpus be spent through way of subsidy. That is a laid out corpus that you had put on paper. You only got industry to use 50% of that, and the rest of the 50% you want to sort of stretch, prolong the subsidy period, keeping the same budget in mind. I'm saying keep the same budget and keep the same terms and conditions. Let it run out. 10,000 crores runs out in 18 months. Great. You have seen that faster adoption of mobility or whatever. E-mobility.
And manufacturing.
Yeah, if I were to add to, I don't want to add, I just have a thought as Karthik was talking. I think I get a sneaky feeling that since so much of purchasing is happening from China, if you want to have an electric scooter or an electric car, you're going to buy batteries and so many other things which we don't have the capability to make it in India. We're going to buy it from China mainly because it's cheaper to buy it from China. You know, they have the expertise to do it. I don't think Indian government wants to allocate a huge sum of money, out of which a huge chunk is going to be spent by these electric two-wheeler makers on China. I have a sneaky feeling that that's probably what the government wants to cut down upon, because here you have government, giving out 10,000 crore rupees, and then the electric two-wheeler industry takes it from them and spends it mostly on China. So I think they want to cut this chain is the guess I have.
All right. So, but all in all, what we know so far is FAME subsidy is going to be cut down. It has been, in fact, cut down from a massive 40% to approximately 15%, which means that your electric two-wheelers are now more expensive. There is going to be a hit in sales figure, which is what the industry is anticipating at this point in time. We will keep coming back on that story. But moving on, Make in India iPhones are all set to hit the market by April of 2024. They'll be made here in Karnataka, in India. Good news, Krishna. Krishna is happy.
Well, since I've been painted as this, blindfolded supporter of, iPhones every single time I'm here on this show, I have to tell you that I buy iPhones because I find it value for money. Nothing else. I have nothing to show off. I have absolutely nothing to tell you guys that I own a brand. Nothing. If I were to pay a certain sum of money on a gadget, does it make my mind and a heart happy? It does, and it does for so many Indians. All the Indians who've been kept complaining about the fact that this is retail at such a huge price. Look at the salaries in India. This is a person's salary. This is a person's kidney. And all those things. I'm like, and their biggest growth market is India. Their numbers are growing exponentially in India. They have 2 new stores in India. They have more stores coming up in India. So to me, this is an argument that's going to go on till the cows come home for eternity. Because it's very difficult to justify. Then you say Android, fraudulent apps, often apps crashing, phone crashing, no security enough. You just spoke about fraudulent phone apps and the iPhones have better security. So my happiness here is that if the way they've done it, if you see, they have the iPhone 14 mini, they have the iPhone 14 Max, iPhone 14 Pro, Pro Max. They're able to give out this entire array of product line, which all kinds of Indians can aspire to and buy into. And if that cost of all of them can come down by 10%, because they're being made in India, I think you're talking about an Apple nation, becoming going forward.
I think Apple should hire Krishna. He's their free spokesperson here on our show today. But Karthik, how far are we prepared? I am given to understand that land has been acquired, money has been paid, the plant is going to start in Devanahalli in Karnataka. So it is, in a sense, a big thrust for iPhone lovers like Krishna, because they're going to find iPhones in the market from April of 2024, which say that they've been made in India.
Okay, I would hate to kill Krishna's enthusiasm, but I still would. I doubt it'll make any dent on the price tag, number one, right? Number two, I'm not sure how many of these made in India iPhones are actually going to be sold in India iPhones as well. Okay. These would pretty much even be exported out of the country, which is where I draw my excitement from. So I'm happy about a couple of points. I also love my iPhone, right? So, maybe the Apple job there could be...
No, you're not matching the enthusiasm.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what gives me excitement. What gives me excitement is the fact that, Devanahalli in Karnataka, a lesser heard of city, is going to get one of the biggest factories in the state. It's going to employ 50,000 people. 50,000 youth in this country will get trained, will get skilled, will get employed, right? In addition to that, there is a whole export story that opens up. Up until now, we were making cases of AirPods. We were making other accessories, screens, the outside casing of phones, the aluminum casing and all of that, right? So I'm happy that now a major product, one of the best-selling products, which is the phone, gets made in India, gets exported out of India, and you get dollar revenue for those exports. So if you look at the overall GDP, and again, that is where I think the larger India story shines and the whole Make in India sort of finds its wings, is the fact that you're making an iPhone in India, which you are exporting. That export revenue is forex income for you. Okay. That adds to your GDP. 50,000 people get employed, pay taxes, earn a living and pay taxes. Government revenue adds to the GDP, and overall development in a state, infrastructure development. The Karnataka government has assured that infrastructure, water, electricity, all of that will be provided. And of course, land has been acquired, which is one of the most difficult aspects in this country, land acquisition. But land has been acquired, a third of the payment has been made by Foxconn. So yeah, just to sort of clarify, Foxconn is manufacturing, iPhones for Apple in Devanahalli in India. So all of this is infrastructure development, there is employment generation, there is forex revenue. And yeah, I mean, if in the bargain you get a 5% discount on your iPhones made in India, sold in India, great, nobody minds that.
For once, I'm not disagreeing with Karthik. Actually, that's what I wanted to begin with.
Right. But we will come back on that. I understand your enthusiasm, Krishna. We will come back on that. That is a very, very important story. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition. Keep watching Newsline.